Even after taking a plea, Boosie has just been sentenced on firearm possession, and for the first time, it feels like there's no coming back. But the sentence itself isn't the most shocking part.
The fact that I was sentenced to third offense marijuana, 10 years. I was sentenced to 10 years. The system been let me down.
Some say this all ties back to when he beat his death row case. Let me break it down. When keeping it real goes wrong, the streets are buzzing, the hood is in shock, and hip-hop just lost one of its realest soldiers. Torrance Ivy Hatch Jr., better known to the culture as Boosie.
It's just a plea that I'm doing on August 26th.
But real talk, to understand how we got here, we got to go back to where it all started, the grimy streets of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where young Torrance first picked up that mic and started spitting bars about the struggle. Boosie's legal history has been marked by several run-ins with the justice system, and that criminal record would come back to haunt him in ways he never imagined. The foundation of all this drama got laid back in '08, when what should have been just another day in the hood turned into the beginning of a nightmare that's still going strong. On October 22nd, 2008, Boosie was arrested by East Baton Rouge Sheriff's deputies after authorities found marijuana and a Glock handgun in his vehicle.
Yeah.
Now, how long have you been fighting this thing from the very, very beginning?
I've been fighting for probably 3 years. Probably.
3 years.
The young rapper, who was just starting to blow up in the dirty South hip-hop scene, found himself swallowed up by the prison industrial complex that's been destroying black men for generations. Boosie pleaded guilty to the third offense marijuana possession charge on September 22, 2009. What happened next was some straight-up judicial. Judge Chip Moore initially hit him with a 2-year bid. But when they found out Boosie had violated his house arrest between the
Now, it was a state case. The feds came, picked it up. They had a ruling in the Supreme Court that went in my favor. And the case got dropped by the judge. The case got dropped.
But the system wasn't done trying to break this young black man from the projects. While he was already locked up, they decided to stack even more charges on him, charges that would keep him caged for damn near a decade. In 2011, while still behind bars, Boosie got hit with additional drug-related charges for allegedly trying to smuggle drugs into prison. He ended up pleading guilty, which stretched his sentence out to 8.
The fact that I was sentenced to third offense marijuana, 10 years. I was sentenced to 10 years. The system been let me down.
But the most serious shit was still coming in what would become one of the most talked about murder cases in Louisiana's recent history. On June 17, 2010, Boosie was indicted for the first-degree murder of Terry Boyd, who was killed in 2009. The prosecution was trying to paint the picture that Boosie had hired Michael Marlowe Mike Louding to handle his business, allegedly as part of some murder-for-hire plot over territory beef. The stakes couldn't have been higher. If they convicted him, he was looking at the death penalty.
I was sentenced to 10 for third offense marijuana.
Yeah.
How you know if I'm drug addict if you never send me to rehab? I was sent straight to the pen. How am I, you know if I'm a drug addict if you've never offered me rehab?
But the most serious heat was still on the way, what would go down as one of the most talked about murder cases in Louisiana's recent history. On June 17, 2010, Boosie was indicted for the first-degree murder of Terry Boyd, who had been killed the year before in 2009. Prosecutors tried to paint a picture that Boosie had hired Michael Marlowe Mike Louding to do the job, framing it as part of a murder-for-hire plot tied to territory beef. The stakes couldn't have been higher if convicted. Boosie was staring straight at the death penalty. Interview. The prosecutors were trying to paint Boosie as some cold-blooded killer, suggesting he might have been connected to at least 5 other bodies, though they never had enough evidence to actually charge him with those. The case became a circus, with prosecutors using everything from Boosie's rap lyrics to phone records as so-called evidence. Songs like 187 In and Body Bag, which he had recorded around the time Terry Boyd got killed, were being dissected line by line in the courtroom, with prosecutors claiming these weren't just bars, but actual confessions. Boosie entered a not guilty plea on June 28, 2010 in a Louisiana courtroom. His defense team went hard, arguing that the prosecution's whole case was built on the word of Michael Loeing, whose testimony was shakier than a crack house in an earthquake. The defense was so confident, they didn't even call witnesses. They just rested their case, basically saying the prosecution had nothing solid. The tension in that Louisiana courtroom must have been thick as smoke in a trap house as 12 jurors deliberated on whether one of the South's most promising rap talents would live or die. The whole hip-hop community was holding its breath, knowing that a conviction wouldn't just end Boo's career, but potentially his life. On May 11, 2012, a jury acquitted Boosie of the murder charge after less than 10 minutes of deliberation. That quick decision showed everybody what many already knew. The prosecution's case was weaker than watered-down liquor. The acquit was a major W for Boosie and his people, but the damage was already done. Years of his prime had been stolen by the system. Even though he beat the murder rap, Boosie up on those drug charges. He finally got released on March 5, 2014 after serving approximately 5 years of his 8-year sentence. His early release was probably due to good behavior and some legal maneuvering by his attorneys. But the experience had changed him forever. The young wild rapper who went in was now a hardened veteran who understood how the game really worked. Following his release, Boosie remained on parole until 2018, which meant he was still under the system's thumb with all kinds of restrictions and monitoring. But instead of being broken by what he'd been through, Boosie seemed hungrier than ever. He dove back into his music career like his life depended on it, dropping project after project and rebuilding his fan base. The comeback story became part of his legend. However, those old convictions were like a chain around his neck that he could never fully shake. Federal and state laws that stop convicted felons from having straps would keep coming back to bite him. His status as a convicted felon from the 2011 drug conviction amplifies the severity of firearm-related charges as federal law prohibits felons from possessing guns. The same script kept playing out in the years after his release. In 2019, Boosie was arrested in Noonan, Georgia during a traffic stop after a deputy observed a white Dodge Charger swerving and nearly sideswiping another vehicle. The familiar scene played out again. The officers smelled that sticky icky, searched the whip, and found drugs and a loaded gun. But it was what happened on May 6, 2023 in San Diego, California that would set everything in motion for the legal drama that's now threatening to take Boosie away from the streets and his family indefinitely. The rapper had traveled to America's finest city to shoot a video and perform at a club in the Gas Lamp Quarter. Just another routine business trip that would turn into his biggest legal nightmare since beating that murder case over a decade earlier. Social media, snitching, and federal pressure. The sun was setting over San Diego's Choiceview neighborhood on May 6, 2023, when what should have been just another day of grinding and getting money for Boosie Badass turned into a federal case that would have the culture talking for years. The 42-year-old rapper from the Red Stick had rolled up to Southern California with big plans. He was supposed to shoot a video and perform that night at the Phantom Lounge and nightclub in the bougie Gas Lamp Quarter. What the OG couldn't have predicted was that the boys in blue were already watching his every move, waiting for him to slip up. The irony of the whole situation was some real street, Boosie, who built his whole career on keeping it 100 with his fans and never switching up, was doing exactly what made him authentic, sharing his real-time experiences on social media. According to court documents, San Diego police, while monitoring an Instagram live stream of a known neighborhood, gang member observed a man later identified as Boosie with a black handgun tucked into his waistband in a residential backyard. Real talk. In today's social media era, where rappers live their lives online for the fans, Boosie's natural instinct to show his followers what was really going on inadvertently gave the feds all the ammunition they needed to launch a major operation. The same transparency that made him beloved in the hood became the trap that caught him slipping. Using an airborne law enforcement unit, basically a police chopper, authorities tracked him to a black SUV. The level of resources they deployed for this bust was some serious overkill. Multiple units, helicopter surveillance, and coordinated tracking, all focused on a rapper who was just in town to make some money and connect with his West Coast fan base. When they finally made their move and pulled that traffic stop, the results were exactly what the boys were hoping for. The search revealed 2 loaded handguns in the vehicle, 1 Glock and 1 Hellcat, along with Boosie and another cat named Billy Johnson. Finding those pieces set off a whole chain reaction that would dominate the next phase of Boo's life. At first, the situation looked manageable from where Boosie was sitting. He faced state charges, including possession of a firearm by a felon, concealed carry in a vehicle, possession of ammunition by a prohibited person, and being an unlisted owner of a registered firearm. His lawyer, Megan Blanco, had let him know he was prepared to cop a plea to the state charges with expectations of getting probation instead of more time behind bars. The strategy made sense from a street perspective. Boosie had learned from his previous legal battles that sometimes the smartest play is to take responsibility, work with the system, and keep it moving. His fans understood his situation, and there was real hope that this latest legal speed bump would get handled quickly and quietly.
Could have appealed that, but that'll be 2-3 more years, and I'm just wasn't gonna go to trial with it,
Yeah.
The emotional toll was written all over his face as Boosie expressed his frustration publicly, calling the situation straight harassment and even taking to social media to apologize to his children, writing, "I want to take this time to apologize to my kids. I am sorry and I love y'all forever." The thought of potentially doing federal time while his 9 kids watched from the sidelines was clearly eating him alive. Boosie pleaded not guilty to the federal charges and was initially detained, but on June 20th, 2023, a magistrate judge granted him bail on a $50,000 bond, later increased to $100,000. The conditions allowed him to travel for shows, which gave him some financial stability during this crazy period, but the federal case still hung over his head like a storm cloud. For over a year, Boosie lived in legal purgatory, never knowing when the other shoe would drop. He kept touring, recording music, and maintaining his public image, but anyone close to him could see the stress was wearing him down as the uncertainty of potentially facing decades in federal prison weighed on every part of his life and career. Then came what looked like divine intervention on July 12, 2024, when U.S. District Judge Kathy and Ben Cho dismissed the federal firearm possession charge, citing a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision, United States v. Dward, which found that prohibiting nonviolent felons from owning guns
I was celebrating, bro.
And we were celebrating too early.
I was celebrating.
was unconstitutional under the Second Amendment. Since Boosie's prior convictions were for nonviolent drug offenses, his legal team successfully argued that he shouldn't lose his gun rights under this new precedent. The celebration was immediate and
I got a call on the beach 3 weeks later with my family. Say they just indicted you again. They added a charge, say I was a drug addict.
I think they were trying to use one of my interviews to justify that over something that you were talking about from like 10 years ago.
emotional. Boosie cried tears of joy outside the courtroom, saying, "This situation made me see who was down with me and who wasn't. God had a different plan." He even posted a video celebrating from the lazy river at San Diego's Sycuan Casino Resort, looking like he had finally closed this chapter once and for all. For fans who had followed his decades-long legal battles, this felt like the redemption arc they'd been waiting for, surviving the streets, beating a murder charge, serving his time, and now being vindicated by the courts. But the story didn't end there. Less than 2 weeks later, on July 19, 2024, U.S. Attorney Tara McGrath's office came back swinging, re-indicting Boosie on 2 counts. Possession of a firearm by a felon in interstate commerce, and a new charge of knowingly possessing a firearm while using or addicted to a controlled substance. The re-indictment also sought forfeiture of all firearms and ammunition involved, and if convicted on both charges, Boosie could face up to 25 years in federal prison.
Wasn't gonna go to trial with it,
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna go to trial with it from the dump actually, but I feel like this the right move for me. I trust in God, Vlad.
The emotional whiplash was devastating. One moment Boosie was celebrating freedom and vindication, and the next he was staring down even harsher charges than before. His reaction on social media was raw and unfiltered, a mix of anger and frustration that made it clear he felt the system was deliberately targeting him.
I thought this case was over and I was going to get on with my life, but God don't make mistakes and I'm tired of fighting. Talk to my family and this is the right decision.
The addition of the drug-related charge hit especially grimy, with Boosie questioning why it wasn't included in the first indictment, calling the whole process a circus and accusing prosecutors of overreach. The timing felt cruel, almost calculated, letting him celebrate his freedom only to snatch it away with even harsher consequences, like the system wanted to break his spirit completely.
Stop asking for a fucking pardon. You taking your faith out. You taking your faith out of God. You ask God to put faith in a man. Stop asking a man. Stop asking people. So I trust in God, man. I mean, my prize ain't. I don't have no bad prize. I mean.
Years deep in a case that kept shifting and worsening every time he thought he'd caught a break, the emotional and financial toll was crushing. And the same man who once swore he'd never fold was starting to realize that sometimes the realest move is knowing when to walk.
Now Hatch, known as Boosie to his fans, now awaits sentencing. He's a father of 9 kids. His fiancée was with him in court today. So some background on this case.
The decision that would change everything didn't come from Boosie's high-powered attorney.
So I just want to get it over with, accept my guilty plea. I'm ready to get over it.
Anything you want to say to your fans?
Just say a prayer for him. I just need
or his street advisors, but from the people who loved him the most. In
just say a prayer for him. I just need prayer. I don't need nothing else. Yeah.
Painful, heart-wrenching conversations, his family helped him see what his pride had been blinding him from accepting, that sometimes the most gangster move isn't standing tall against impossible odds, but putting your family first, prioritizing what truly matters, and living to fight another day. On August 4th, 2025, Boosie shocked the hip-hop world when he announced on X that he had accepted a plea deal in the federal gun case, a move that sent waves through his fan base and the culture at large. This was the same man who had spent decades battling the system, who had beaten a high-profile murder charge against impossible odds, and who had built his image around.
In the plea deal, that they throwing that out.
Okay, they threw that out.
And Hatch currently lives in Atlanta. Now he faces a maximum of 15 years behind bars. His defense attorney did not disclose any parts of the plea agreement or any details about it, but the judge made it very clear today, regardless of what's in that plea agreement, it is the sentencing judge who will have the final say.
Standing firm in the face of adversity, while loudly proclaiming both his innocence and his right to bear arms. To outsiders, it might have looked like he was finally throwing in the towel, but those closest to him knew better. This wasn't surrender, it was survival, a calculated decision to protect his future, his freedom, and his family. His mother's wisdom couldn't be ignored in this decision. On August 26, 2025,
and now it's my job to make sure the court understands the scope of the case and what the case was really about, and more importantly, all of the amazing things that Mr. Hatch has done for the community, continues to do, and the amazing things that he will do going forward.
Boosie formally pleaded guilty to 1 count of being a felon in possession of a firearm before a federal judge in San Diego. And the courtroom was filled with heavy emotion as Boosie's fiancée and family members stood by his side, offering support during what was likely one of the hardest and most humbling moments of his life. The weight of his decision was evident in every word he spoke to reporters outside the courthouse. When the media pressed him about what he needed most from his supporters, his response was simple.
That ain't how I go in Fed court. Once you take a plea, your sentencing ain't till 2-3 months after that. So I'm gonna be.
The charge carries a maximum penalty of 15 years in prison, though federal prosecutors agreed to drop the second firearm charge related to drug use and recommend a 2-year prison sentence as part of the plea agreement. The deal also includes a recommendation for 3 years of supervised release following any prison term, and prosecutors agreed not to seek additional financial penalties, citing Boosie's limited financial prospects. The details of the plea agreement revealed the interstate nature of the crime that triggered federal jurisdiction. as prosecutors disclosed that Bowie had purchased the Glock and Hellcat handguns.
I hope they send you somewhere where they mistreat Boosie.
But for all the legal technicalities and plea negotiations, the human cost of this whole saga can't be.
So God have to push you where you gonna serve him in jail?
Boosie's attorney, Megan Blanco, emphasized the personal toll while expressing cautious optimism about the sentencing outcome. She highlighted Boosie's community involvement and charitable work, telling reporters, "I am optimistic for Mr. Hatch. He wanted nothing more than to accept responsibility and put this behind him. And now it's my job to make sure the court."
It's up to the judge to give me credit for my anger monitor. But it's up to God to get to that judge, man. You know, I mean, I'm ready for whatever, Vlad. Like, I'm built like this, Vlad. Like I told you, if God want me free, gonna keep me free.
The timing of the sentencing adds another layer of tragedy to this story, with the hearing scheduled for November 21st, 2025.
I'll send my ass to jail. That'd be calm. That's all that be.
Well, I mean, you've done it before. I'm being honest.
Right.
This is not me in front of the camera. I've never seen a gun on the coffee table.
Just days after Boo's birthday. Instead of celebrating turning 43, the father of 9 will be learning his fate, facing the possibility of spending his prime years locked up in federal prison. Despite all the uncertainty, Boosie has continued to grind and perform while free.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever had a judge who I would say is fair. Judges always stuck it to me.
Do you think it's because this judge is in California as opposed to Louisiana? Because you've always had Louisiana judges, right?
Yeah.
The resilience he's shown throughout this ordeal is what real street soldiers are made of. Even while facing the possibility of years in the pen, he's maintained his performance schedule and continued pushing his music. His album, Words of a Real One, was released on August 1st, 2025, just days before his guilty plea, showing his commitment to his craft even in the darkest times. However, not everybody in the hip-hop community has shown love during this difficult period. The most vocal hater has been Charleston White, a controversial figure who's used Boosie's legal troubles as